She laughed when I fell, not just a smirk, not a slip of cruelty, a full laugh in front of her friends at her own engagement party. I had just tried to reach her, struggling to push through the crowd with my cane. My grip slipped on the polished floor, and I collapsed in front of everyone. The music didn't stop, but the laughter did, until Odette turned, glanced down at me, and let out a laugh so effortless, so polished, like I was a joke she had rehearsed. I remember the sound of her heels tapping past me, the way her fiancé reached for her waist while she whispered something into his ear. I don't know what she said. I didn't need to. Their laughter told me everything. She once told me I was her favorite person in the world, that she liked talking to me more than anyone else, that she admired how calm I always stayed, how patient I was with pain no one else had to endure. Now she called me a decoration she'd outgrown, a chair she didn't want in the pictures. I disappeared after that night. I left the city, cut ties, with every mutual friend, blocked her on everything. For a year, I said nothing, did nothing, but every night I heard her voice. Michael's sweet, but who wants to marry someone who can't stand? She was right. That version of me didn't deserve her, so I stood. The process was slow, private, relentless. I stood, then walked, then kept walking. Through the pain, through the tremors, through the memory of her turning her back on me like I was weightless. And then 1 year later, I walked again, into her wedding. She turned to announce her vows, and froze. Because I wasn't in a wheelchair anymore. Because I wasn't trembling anymore. Because I was no longer the boy she humiliated. I stood in the back row and smiled, holding a small velvet box in my coat pocket. Not a ring. An invitation. Not for her wedding, for mine. My name is Michael. I've never needed the world to remember it. Growing up, I wasn't the loudest in the room or the brightest in the class. I didn't run races, didn't play football, didn't sneak kisses behind the bleachers. I was the one always sitting near the window, watching. People came and went in my life, some out of kindness, most out of pity. I never blamed them. When you live life from a wheelchair, silence becomes easier than conversation. But then came Odette. She was lightning. Loud, bright, impossible to ignore. I met her in 9th grade. She had just transferred to our school, daughter of some big corporate family, hair tied up in a careless bun, sneakers unlaced, books falling out of her arms. She tripped over my wheelchair the first week and laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. I expected the usual apology laced with discomfort. Instead, she crouched in front of me, grinning, and asked if my wheels had secret turbo mode. I stared at her like she was mad. She only laughed louder. That was Odette. Unpredictable. Untamed. From that day on, she made it her mission to never leave me alone. She'd wheel me to class too fast, shout jokes across the hall, throw snacks into my lap in the cafeteria like she was feeding a bird. Everyone thought we were a couple by our 2nd year. We weren't. Not really. She never said she loved me. But she said everything else. That I was her favorite person. That I understood her better than anyone. That I was the calm in her chaos. When she had a bad day, she'd find me. When she was hurt, she'd call me. When she dated other guys, she'd still curl up beside me afterward, barefoot and exhausted, whispering that no one got her like I did. I let it all happen. Because when you love someone the way I loved Odette, even half of them feels like a gift. I watched her live. That's what it was like, watching her live while I sat still. Boyfriends came and went, but I never asked questions. I never got jealous. I couldn't afford to. What right does a man in a wheelchair have to be jealous of someone who can run after her? So I stayed quiet, loyal, always one call away, even when it hurt, even when she called me her safe space to someone else at a party as if I were furniture. By the time we were 24, people had stopped asking if we were together. They just assumed we had some kind of complicated understanding. The truth was much simpler. I loved her. She didn't love me, but she needed me, and I mistook that for love. Sometimes she'd rest her head on my shoulder and say, "If you were different, maybe," and then trail off. I knew what she meant. She didn't have to finish the sentence. Maybe if I could stand. Maybe if I wasn't broken. Maybe if loving me didn't come with so many limitations. I smiled and told her I understood. Because I did. That kind of understanding becomes second nature when you've spent your life watching the world race past you. The breaking point didn't come in a dramatic confession or some final heartbreak. It came in laughter. Her laughter. We were 26. I had just arrived at a friend's engagement party. She was already there, standing in the center of the room like the world had been built to orbit her. I tried to get through the crowd. My hands slipped on the chair's wheels and I fell forward. My cane clattered to the floor. The music kept playing. Odette saw me fall, and she laughed, not awkwardly, not nervously, just laughed. With her arm hooked around a tall man's elbow, she leaned in and whispered something that made him laugh too. I saw her eyes glance toward me once, then move away, like I was something inconvenient that had gotten in the way of her big night. That was the last time I looked at her as someone I loved. The next morning, I packed a bag and left town. No goodbye, no explanations. Just gone. I moved in with my uncle down south and started over. New city, new air, new silence. I didn't go to hospitals. I went to war, with my body, with my memory, with the ghost of a girl who had once knelt beside me and said I made her feel calm. I trained every day, quiet, private, punishing. I collapsed more times than I could count. My legs ached constantly. Sometimes I screamed into my pillow. Sometimes I didn't move for hours. But slowly, painfully, I stood. Then took a step. Then another. Until, 1 year later, I didn't need the chair every day. I still used it when the tremors came, still kept it close. But I could walk now. Not fast, not far, but enough. And then, as if the universe couldn't help itself, Martin called. "Odette's getting married," he said casually. "Some guy her dad likes, big venue, lots of champagne, you know the drill." My heart didn't skip. My breath didn't hitch. I just stared at the cane resting beside my couch. "I'll be there," I said. The wedding venue looked like it belonged on a movie set. Cream-colored columns, glass chandeliers, tables lined with gold foil menus and name cards embossed in cursive. People wore diamonds like they were casual accessories. Waiters moved like dancers. Trays balanced like art. I rolled in through the back entrance, not because I had to, but because it felt right. I still brought the chair. I still used it sometimes. Pain wasn't always visible, and some wounds didn't vanish just because your legs finally moved again. Martin greeted me, near the bar. His hair had grown out, messy as ever, and his voice still carried the casual irreverence that made him likable. "Didn't think you'd show," he said, eyes flicking to the chair. "She doesn't deserve it, you know." I raised an eyebrow. "The party or my forgiveness?" He chuckled. "Both." He didn't ask how I was walking again. Martin was the kind of friend who didn't need explanations. He only asked, "Want a drink before the chaos starts?" I declined. I wanted to be sharp for this. I didn't come to forget. I came to remember. The ceremony was set to begin at 6. Guests trickled in like petals carried by wind, soft, fluttering, beautiful. I stayed in the back, unnoticed, just the way I liked it. My chair blended into the background again, letting me observe without being seen. Then I saw her, Odette, stepped into the room like it belonged to her. She wore white. Not just a wedding dress, but something designed to make people stare. A sweep of ivory silk, lace climbing up her arms, a neckline that dared anyone to look away. Her smile was perfect. Camera perfect. Rehearsed. Her arm was hooked through a man's, her groom no doubt, tall, angular, polished like a magazine ad. The kind of man who belonged in rooms like this. I expected to feel something, jealousy, anger, regret. But what I felt instead was distance, like I was watching a stranger perform a role in a film I didn't care to finish. I leaned back slightly, gripping the armrest of my chair. She turned, scanning the room. Her eyes brushed past me and kept moving. No pause, no flicker of surprise. Maybe she didn't recognize me, or maybe she did, and decided I wasn't worth recognizing. The ceremony began. Vows were exchanged with practiced solemnity, the kind that felt scripted. There was no stutter, no tear, no tremble. Just two people reading promises like they were reading from cue cards. When the kiss came, the applause followed immediately, loud and hollow. I didn't clap. During the reception, I stayed near the edge of the ballroom, half in shadow. I didn't expect her to come over, I didn't want her to. But she did. "Michael," she said softly, like it was a question. I looked up slowly. Her eyes were wide now, shocked. A flicker of something else, confusion, shame. "You came," she said, smoothing her dress pointlessly. "I did," I said. My voice was calm. She hesitated. "I didn't know you still use the chair." "I don't," I replied. Then I stood. Her breath caught, visibly. The shift in her face, recognition, folding into disbelief, was almost cinematic. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her gaze dropped to my legs, then back to my face. You can walk?" I nodded. "How long?" "Long enough?" She folded her arms, suddenly defensive. "Why, didn't you tell me? I didn't think you'd care." Her expression faltered. "That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It's not." We stood there in silence while music swirled behind us, people danced, and waiters refilled champagne. Then she forced a laugh, the same rehearsed sound I remembered from every party she used me to survive. "Well," she said lightly, "look at you, stronger than ever." "Stronger doesn't mean untouched," I replied. She flinched. "You never called," she said after a moment. "You never apologized. I thought you needed space." I did, not exile. Her eyes turned glassy, but she blinked it away. "I was young. People say things they don't mean." "But you meant it," I said, "when you laughed. When you told Shirley I was sweet, but not the kind of man someone actually marries." Odette looked away. Her hand reached for the hem of her dress, twisting fabric between her fingers. That was years ago, and I remember every word. We both fell quiet. Then, as if trying to escape the weight of what she'd stirred, she whispered, "You could have come back." I looked at her carefully. "You were getting married, Odette." She swallowed. And if I wasn't, I didn't answer, because it didn't matter anymore. That night, long after the toasts and the photos and the dancing, I stepped outside into the cool air. I needed space. Real space. Martin found me there, leaning against the stone balcony railing. He offered me a flask. I declined again. "She said anything to you?" he asked. "Enough," I said. "She's not happy, you know." I nodded. "But it's not your job to fix her," he added quietly. "I know," I said. "I'm not here for her." He frowned. "Then why come at all?" I looked out over the dark garden where lights shimmered, like stars trapped in glass. The answer came softly. To remind myself, I'm not the one who's broken anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. The hotel bed was soft, expensive, probably memory foam. But my body wasn't the problem. It was my memory that kept tossing and turning. I stared at the ceiling while the city pulsed quietly outside my window. In my mind, I kept replaying the way she looked at me, startled, hesitant, as if trying to fit me back into a version of me she no longer recognized. I wasn't angry. That's what made it worse. I wasn't angry because I had no right to be. I had left. I had disappeared. And she had moved on, in her own shallow, impulsive way. That was Odette, a girl who reached for shiny things before checking if they could be held, but part of me still hurt. That stubborn part that remembered everything. The way she'd sneak cookies into my locker. The time she threatened a boy for calling me the cripple. The way she used to rest her chin on my shoulder like I was the safest place in the world. I thought I had buried all of that. But seeing her again was like digging up bones I didn't know I still carried. And now they were rattling in my chest, making sleep impossible. Around 2 a.m, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring the first time. The second time I answered. It was her. Michael, she said, and her voice cracked just saying my name. I can't sleep. I didn't say anything. I didn't know you'd be there, she whispered. You looked different. I am. A pause. Why didn't you ever tell me? What would that have changed? Her breath trembled through the line. Everything. No, I said. You still would have married him. Another silence. Then she said, I didn't laugh because I hated you. You laughed because I embarrassed you. I was scared. And I was humiliated. We both stopped speaking. The silence this time was heavier, deeper. I'm not happy, she finally said. You were always the one I felt safe with. I didn't realize how much until it was too late. It's still too late. I miss you. I closed my eyes. My throat felt tight. I don't, I said, and hung up. But the truth is, I did. Not her. Not who she'd become. I missed the version of her that existed in memories too old to hurt, but too sharp to forget. The next day, I walked the city alone. I didn't tell Martin. I didn't bring my cane. I needed to know how far I could go without falling. Every step was a test. Every corner turned was a reminder that I was walking through the same city I once watched from a wheelchair. I passed a bookstore where she once dragged me inside because she liked the smell of old pages. I passed the fountain she used to throw pennies into, always wishing for something she never said out loud. I passed the cafe where she once held my hand under the table and said, I don't know why, but I feel safest with you. Every place carried a shadow of her, and every shadow tested me. By the time I returned to the hotel, my legs ached. My spine felt like it had been twisted out of shape. I collapsed into the chair by the window and stayed there until the sun dipped, below the skyline. The door knocked around 6. I didn't answer. Another knock. Then a familiar voice. Michael? It's Shirley. I opened the door slowly. She looked apologetic, nervous. Can I talk to you? She asked. I nodded and let her in. She sat on the couch, legs crossed, hands twisting in her lap. I was there that night, she said. When she laughed. I didn't respond. She did it because she was scared. Because you falling made everything too real, that you were still hoping. And she didn't want to deal with what she knew deep down. She didn't have to laugh. She regrets it, Shirley whispered. She's not a monster, Michael, just careless. And a little cruel without meaning to be. Intent doesn't erase the wound. I know. Silence again. Then she said, Why did you come? I looked at her. To prove to myself that I didn't love her anymore. Shirley nodded slowly. Did you succeed? I didn't answer. She stood. Take care of yourself, she said, and left. I stared at the closed door for a long time. No answer. No clarity. Just questions that didn't deserve answers anymore. That night, I sat in the chair again, the one I had once needed, now just furniture. I watched the skyline light up like a circuit board. Somewhere out there she was probably alone, too, but not mine, not anymore, and I wasn't hers. I didn't belong to her hurt. I didn't owe her anything, not explanation, not comfort, and yet, part of me still felt like it had been left behind in a chapter I never got to close. I opened my drawer. Inside was a velvet box, not a ring, just a folded invitation, a wedding. Not hers. Mine. Set for 4 weeks from now, and not a soul in this city knew it. Not yet. Not even her. It was Martin who knocked this time. I opened the door expecting sarcasm, maybe a beer in his hand, but he looked different, serious, almost pale. "She's at the hotel lobby," he said. "She came alone." I stared at him. "Why?" "She said she needs to talk, said it's urgent." "I already talked to her." "This isn't that kind of talk," he muttered. "She's crying, not the fake kind." I didn't answer right. Away. Martin scratched his head, agitated. "Look, I don't like her, all right? You know I don't. But it's different. She's not wearing makeup. Her hair's a mess. She looks like someone who got hit by a truck." I still didn't move. Martin sighed. "She said something weird." "What?" He hesitated. "She said she didn't go through with the wedding." My chest didn't tighten. My heart didn't race. But something in me paused, like a page torn halfway through. "You were there," I said quietly. "Yeah." I saw the kiss. "The cake. The vows." He nodded. "Everything was done. But right before they were supposed to sign the papers privately, she left, walked out. Nobody noticed in the chaos. I thought she just needed air. But she didn't come back." My breath slowed. "So what now?" Martin handed me a note, folded, clean, white paper, her handwriting. "Michael, please, just 5 minutes. I need to explain something I should have said years ago. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm not trying to fix anything. Just tell the truth, for once." I held the note between my fingers. I didn't move. "Are you going to talk to her?" Martin asked. I looked up. "You said she didn't come back." He nodded. "So where's the groom?" Martin looked away. "He left," he said. 30 minutes ago, with someone else." I blinked once. "Who?" Martin hesitated again. "Shirley." The silence cracked like a fault line. I didn't speak for a long moment. "You're serious?" she confessed, he muttered. "Said she always had feelings for him. Said it got worse the closer the wedding got. Apparently they'd been messaging for weeks. I guess it finally tipped over." "And Odette?" "She didn't scream, didn't cry. Just walked out and sat in the lobby, like she was waiting for someone. Waiting for me. Of course she was." I sat down, the weight of it pressing into my shoulders. The girl who once laughed when I fell, now abandoned in a hotel lobby, stripped of everything she built her life around. "I don't know what she's hoping for," Martin added. "But I think you need to decide if this is still your story." It wasn't, not anymore. But something inside me, that same piece I thought I had already buried, shifted quietly. Because no matter how far you run, some ghosts wait in the same place until you turn back. I found her in the lobby just as Martin said. Alone. Folded. Into herself like a statue someone had forgotten to finish carving. Odette sat near the far corner, her wedding dress covered by a plain beige coat. Her heels were off, tossed beside her like she no longer cared where they landed. Her hands clutched a paper cup of coffee she hadn't touched. She wasn't crying. She looked like someone who had already cried too much. She didn't notice me until I was close enough for her breath to catch. I stopped a few steps away. "The seat taken?" She looked up slowly. Her eyes were red-rimmed, tired. She nodded to the chair beside her. "No one's been sitting here for a while." I sat down. Neither of us spoke for nearly a minute. Then, with a breath so shallow it might have been silence, she said, "He left with her. I assume you know." I didn't confirm it. I didn't need to. Odette smiled faintly, bitterly. "I guess I deserve that." I looked at her. "That's not how this works." Her eyes met mine. "Then how does it work, Michael? What happens to someone who laughs at the person they were supposed to protect?" "You weren't supposed to protect me." Her gaze dropped. "I know." Silence again. The hotel lobby was emptying out. A cleaner passed by with a mop, barely glancing in our direction. Outside, the rain had started to fall. "I didn't expect to see you," she said. "Not like that." Standing, you mean? She nodded. You once said no one would ever love someone they had to wheel around, I said softly. I didn't mean that, but you said it. She didn't defend herself this time. She didn't cry either. When I saw you fall that night, I laughed because I panicked, she whispered. Not because it was funny. Not because I hated you. Because I didn't know what to do with how much you still believed in me. I looked away. And when you walked into the wedding, she said, I wanted to run. You didn't, I said. No, she replied. Because for a moment I thought you were coming back to me. I didn't answer that. She shifted in her chair, her voice steadier now. Do you know why I agreed to marry him? I don't care. You should, she said. Because it had everything to do with you. I looked at her again, jaw tight. I dated all those men because I kept looking for pieces of you in them, she said. Your calm, your patience, the way you made me feel seen even when I was at my worst. I thought if I found someone who could do even half of that, I'd be fine. But none of them could. So I gave up. I chose stability. A man my father approved. A future that looked perfect on paper. And now it's crumpled, I said flatly. She nodded. And all I want to know is if you still hate me. I never hated you. Her breath shook. But I stopped loving you the moment you laughed. She bit her lip. I was 24. I was selfish. I didn't understand what you meant to me until you disappeared. And by then, I thought I'd lost the right to ask. You did. I know. We sat there, two people who once existed in the same story, now speaking like exiles from different books. You're getting married, she said quietly. Martin told me. I paused, her voice cracked. Do you love her? I do. More silence. She's not me. That's the point. Her hands tightened around her cup. And if I told you I still... I cut her off. Please don't. She exhaled, shaky. Was any of it real? I asked. Any of the moments you spent beside me, all those late-night calls, all those shared silences, were they just comfort or guilt? They were everything, she whispered, but I wasn't brave enough to admit it. Now you are? I'm too late. I didn't deny it. Odette sat straighter, brushing her hair behind her ear almost mechanically. You're right. You don't owe me anything, and I deserve every ounce of your silence, but I had to say it, even if it changes nothing. It does change something, I said. She looked up. It closes the chapter. Her eyes filled, but still no tears fell. I thought I'd forgotten how to feel anything for you, I said. But sitting here, I realized the wound isn't open anymore. It's just a scar. And scars don't ache the way fresh cuts do. A small, broken smile pulled at her lips. That's what I am now? A healed wound. Her voice was nearly a whisper. Would you have loved me if I had stayed? I didn't answer right away. I would have loved you even if you stayed broken, I said. But not after you shattered me. She nodded and for once didn't try to argue. I'm happy you can walk, she said. I'm happy you stopped running. We didn't hug, we didn't cry, we didn't say goodbye. She stood first. For the first time, I watched Odette walk, away from me without needing to reach for her, and I felt no urge to follow. I flew back south the next morning. No goodbyes. No explanations. I left the hotel before Odette could come looking again. I didn't need another late-night phone call, another trembling confession wrapped in regret. I had gotten what I came for, the final piece of clarity. She had waited too long. I arrived back in the quiet, sun-drenched town Anna called home. The same road curved gently past the bay, the trees casting familiar shadows. Pudding came running to the door as I entered, tail wagging like nothing had changed. Anna stepped out of the kitchen. Her eyes met mine, calm, unreadable. You're early, she said, drying her hands. Yeah, I replied. The city didn't have anything left for me. She nodded like she already knew. She usually did. I didn't say much that day. I, unpacked in silence, sat on the floor beside Pudding and ran my hand through his fur. Outside, the wind rustled the fig trees. Inside, Anna worked around the house like it was any other day, but I saw it, the question hovering behind her eyes. So that night, when we sat in the backyard under string lights, our fingers resting on coffee mugs, I looked at her and said, she asked if I still loved her. Anna didn't flinch. She didn't look away. I told her I didn't. She nodded. Was that the truth? It was. Another pause. Then she asked, did you go there to see her? I took a long breath. I went there to stand. Her gaze met mine again, and for a long time neither of us spoke. There was something grounding about the way Anna looked at people, like she could see both their past and future and never judged either. She's not coming back, is she? Anna asked softly. No, I said. Not this time. Anna smiled faintly, and I realized that for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilt shadowing my joy. That weekend, we visited the little temple her father used to go to. We brought flowers, placed them quietly by his photo, and stood in the hush of incense smoke. I whispered a silent promise I never got to make, that I would take care of her, not because I owed anyone, but because I finally wanted to. And then, 3 days later, the letters came. 2 of them. The first was from the Lin family law firm. Formal. Polished. A cold request. Please refrain from publicly discussing Ms. Odette Lin's failed engagement and exit from the Lin estate. I laughed when I read it. She still thought silence could clean her mess. The second letter was handwritten, her handwriting again. Neater this time. Michael, you're not picking up. I understand. You said what you needed to say, and I deserved it. But there's something I didn't tell you. He didn't leave because of Shirley. He left because he found out I used to love you. Not just care, not just need, love. Real love. From the beginning. From the time you called me your safe place, without knowing you were mine. He found our old messages, the photos, even the college notebook where I doodled your name behind chemistry notes. He didn't yell. He just walked away. I've lost everything now. My father removed me from the board. My accounts are frozen. I moved out of the estate. And the only person I want to call is you. But I won't. Not again. I know you've chosen someone better, kinder, quieter. I saw her once in a photo Martin posted. She looked like peace. Please be good to her, because if you're hers now, I know you'll never come back to me again. Odette. I read it once, then burned it. It wasn't revenge, it was closure, the kind she never thought I'd find, the kind I had to earn alone. A week later, Anna and I walked through the town square, her hand tucked into the crook of my elbow. People still look sometimes, not because of the chair, but because of the way she smiled at me like I was a choice she made every single morning. She wasn't loud like Odette. She didn't steal attention, but she made the world feel quieter. Around her, the kind of quiet I had spent my entire life trying to find. We passed the old bookstore. The owner waved. Pudding barked at pigeons. The sun warmed the sidewalk. Everything felt small and enormous at the same time. And that's when Anna said, without turning to look at me, she called me last night. I stopped. She got my number. From Martin, Anna continued. Said she needed to say something. I didn't hang up. I stayed silent. She said I was your rebound, that no one could replace her, that one day you'd remember how she made you feel. I clenched my jaw. And what did you say? Anna turned to face me fully. Her voice was gentle, certain. I told her she was right. She couldn't be replaced. She'll always be the girl who laughed when you fell. My breath caught. Anna smiled, not bitter, not mocking, just steady. And I'll always be the woman who stood next to you when you got back up. I looked at her like I was seeing sunlight for the first time. In the end, it wasn't my walking that proved anything. It wasn't the burned letter. It wasn't Odette's collapse or her apology or the way she said my name like a prayer. It was Anna. The quiet answer to a question I'd spent 12 years asking the wrong person. So when we walked home and I slipped a velvet box into her hand, she didn't gasp. She just smiled and whispered, "Finally." And this time I stood on my own 2 feet when I asked her to marry me.